Thank you for joining iMeet. This meeting is now being recorded.
Hey, a new voice. It's not the guy with the deep, dark voice. That's kind of exciting. So, hey, welcome to the video interview today with Richard Kinney. My name's David Haddavis. I'm President and CEO of CCNG, and Richard's Head of Global Customer Experience Marketing for Plantronics. For those of you who have visited in on these videos in the past, you know that our strategy is to talk 10 to 15, sometimes 18 minutes with Richard, who is traveling the globe talking to various types of contact centers and has tremendous perspective based upon that experience. So today we're going to tackle the next generation employee. There's a lot of discussion around the millennials and what is a contact center going to do to have to adjust to attract and retain these folks. You know, what is the impact on technology, or what will the technologies be? How do we motivate these folks? How do we leverage their talent to retain them? There's a lot in this, and I asked Richard if he wouldn't mind just kind of reviewing customer service, you know, maybe kind of state of the union, if you will, to kick it off, and then I've got some questions to launch him. So Richard, again, thank you as always. Appreciate your time. Really appreciate your insights. But why don't you kick things off with a little bit of a review on customer service for us?
Sure, will do. And always good to be here again, David. Thank you very much. So today I'm in our Santa Cruz headquarters. We'll talk a little bit later on about the new environments needed to bring on board these new generation of employees. So if you get a chance, come and have a look at the smarter headquarters that we've got here, which we're actually really proud of for the way that we can bring on new talent just by using the headquarters here. So as you asked, I'll sort of start off with a bit of an overview of why we're talking about this next generation employee. And for me, the biggest change is the whole nature of the phone call and the interaction between the customer and the organization. In the past, the phone call was the first choice that everybody turned to if they had something wrong or if they wanted to find out information. But what we're finding now is that last year was probably the first year that digital interactions exceeded the number of phone calls between consumers and organizations. And increasingly, as customers sort of come down the age group towards millennials, the preference is for a digital interaction first. How can I get hold of this company on social media? How can I get access to them through the app? How can I get access to their FAQ on a website? So that's really changed the nature of those interactions, is that many of these easy, simple questions end up going through a digital interaction, straight to a website, straight to a web chat session, for example. So what we see as the company that specializes in looking after phone calls is that the phone calls aren't going away. We're not seeing any major organizations downsizing the number of their contact centers, but we are seeing them shift onto different channels. But we're also seeing them recognize that this phone call that comes in is now an escalation. It's now something that cannot be handled by self-service. It's something where the customer has tried digital channels and hasn't found a resolution. So you sort of have three issues coming off the back of this, is that the phone call coming in suddenly turns into a much more longer phone call. It's also much more complex because if you take the world of financial transactions, I'm old enough to remember ringing up my bank and asking for my bank balance. Now it's on a website, it's on an app, it's so easily available. The only time I ring my bank is for a credit card fraud, for example. And what we're also finding is that with many of these calls, it can't be solved by one person. We've seen in the past something like about 11, 12% of calls needing to leave the contact center. And we see that number increasing on a regular basis as these calls get more complex and organizations need to bring in the back office to support them on the phone calls. So,
okay. So let me stop you there and interject something here, because it's kind of deja vu all over again, right? You referenced well, you were automation, but you're making me think of the IVR and how that was going to have a huge impact on the employee base. The first thought process was, with the IVR, we get rid of all the employees. Problem solved, no more issues relating to them. None of that happened, and of course, as we've seen over the course of the last 20 years, it's had a change in who we hire and how they embrace the technology, as you described, digital and voice. So, are they smarter? Are they? Do we have to give them better tools? What's changing on that platform to take advantage of what's coming down the road? And I know you're probably going to talk about this word bot, and we hear a lot about that word bot. So if you wouldn't mind also giving us your definition or understanding what that is so that we can relate to what you're about to share.
Do you know, I'd absolutely love to see some of the old marketing from 30 years ago about IVRs, and I bet it used exactly the same words and exactly the same benefits that we're going to see being used for automated systems now. But yeah, that's sort of one of the first questions is, what does this employee of the future look like? Because yes, we're seeing there's a definite need to move away from someone that does transactional queries into someone that handles these much more complex queries. But if you look at some of the sort of leading edge Silicon Valley press, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this employee is a bot, a robot, an automated idea, somebody that actually, it's not a real human on the end of it. And in some cases, we're actually starting to see this coming through in some of the web chats. Generally, when you come onto a website and you get popped up the box that says, do you want to chat with us? Most of those interactions now are automated at the front end, and they only move into a human interaction when the bot recognizes its capabilities have been exceeded. So bot is just really short for robot, and some companies are calling this robotic process automation or artificial intelligence. And again, there's a lot of discussion about whether this is good for employees or not. This is going to take away some of the more mundane work. They get to deal with just the high-end queries coming in. They don't have to worry about copying and pasting between screens because the automated processes can do that in the background. So quite a bit of discussion in this area, but if you hear the word bot, it just usually means short for robot or some sort of automated robotic system.
Okay. So where is this taking us in terms of the type of people we're going to be hiring? Or look at it from the other side. If you're the young millennial and you're looking to be hired on, what kind of skills are you having to bring to the table that's different than maybe where we are today or 5 years ago?
Well, if I look at the key skill set that people have been hiring for over the last 3 to 5 years, it's been empathy, which has been at the top of the list. That sort of recognition that the customers are in a bit of pain when they call us and we've got to understand them and listen to them. Well, I don't think that's going to go away, but what you're going to find layered on top of that is the word adaptability. If you are in a role that is transactional, there's probably a higher risk that role can be replaced by an automated system or a digital. So what I'd recommend the companies do is start looking for people who are adaptable and can change either themselves or they can change some of the systems around them as well to take account of some of these new complex questions that are coming in.
Yeah, I would echo that from what we're hearing in terms of empathy. I mean, the one thing a robot cannot do is empathize. And
absolutely.
Now we're talking about the customer experience and how people are treated in a customer scenario. So what's a typical strategy going forward? You're in that position where you're going to be adding this type of technology, or you've already started down that path, and it's now bleeding into your hiring. It's having an impact on the people that are already employed. What's a good 5-year strategy? And I don't mean to pin you down on time. I'm just trying to give a go-forward plan here.
Well, I think if I look at it, there's 3 different ways that organizations are trialing and trying to understand which are the best for their route forward. And we can split them down into what I call the smarter employee, the collaborating employee, and the augmented employee. So it's probably best if I give a little bit of an explanation of some of those because they sound a bit $6 million man, some of them.
Yeah.
But the first one is the smarter employee. And this is what some companies are trying, that the one employee knows absolutely everything. They recruit an employee that is much higher level, so degree qualified, high level of experience, possibly some technical qualifications. And that employee is given the role of owning that customer issue right the way through to the end. They're the one that gives the customers the answer. We have to have a high expectation of this employee. We have to give them lots of training as well. So that's been one that people have been trying for a while in sort of finance environments where they want that customer to be owned through to conclusion. Some of the finance environments are having sort of one person own it through a real high level employee. The biggest issue that we're finding with that one is budgeting, is that the contact centers really still need to complete this transition to move away from a cost center to value creation. And until that's really been completed, trying to up the budget to match these super employees' requirements is really hard work to do. We've not seen any organizations really seem to manage it yet. Yet they're trying to boost the employees up. They're investing a lot in training, but we can't go to that sort of top level step of the super employee because we haven't really got the budget to match it yet.
So do you have any examples of companies that are employing these strategies?
Yeah, I think there's, like I said, the finance industry is looking at these ones quite a lot. It's a reasonably complex environment that's got quite a bit of rules around it in certain countries. So having a good understanding of those rules and regulations, having a good understanding of the broad portfolios that are on offer from a finance company, we're seeing that need a reasonably high-level person to sort of navigate that well and provide a good customer experience.
How does employee collaboration factor into all this? You talked about one person owning it, but we hear a lot about collaboration enterprise-wide. How does that factor in?
So yeah, that's the second approach that people are looking at, is this idea that that front-end employee that answers the phone doesn't know everything, but they do know who to contact and more importantly, how to contact that person to bring them in onto the customer phone call. So anecdotally, I've been to an awful lot of contact centers recently that are trialing Microsoft Skype for Business, so that employee on the front end is able to quickly reach out into different areas of the enterprise and find somebody that is willing, that is able to help answer this customer query. Now, if I think back to the days when I started in contact centers, my escalation route was waving a large orange cardboard tube to get attention. So it's really good to see that we've moved on from that level here, because what these collaboration systems give you is easy access and easy visibility on who's available, and a way to not just send and receive instant messages, but potentially to bring them onto that phone call, so that you're not putting the customer on mute or on hold. You're actually bringing the expert onto the phone call, so they get to hear the customer issue, they get to hear the voice of the customer, and the customer gets the immediate benefits of their expertise to get their resolution for them.
You mentioned 3 approaches: smarter, collaborating. What's the third approach?
So the third one is the augmented employee, which again sounds fantastic. And this, to some degree, is a little bit more of an emerging one, where companies are starting to invest in analytics systems to nudge employees in the right direction. So they're starting to use this analytics in 3 different ways. The first one is they just sort of look at calls that have taken place and change their processes based on some of the customer words and outcomes. Second stage is that they use analytics in real time to show the next best step for that employee to take. And the third stage is where they actually use the analytics to predict why somebody is calling. So there's no need to route people through an IVR. There's no need to have, why are you calling? What's your details? That's all automatically recognized. So this isn't a trivial approach. These analytics systems are multi-million dollars in terms of their purchase cost, but also their investment that you have to do as a business to really get the most out of them. But that's where we're seeing an awful lot of companies go to, is recognizing that there may be fewer phone calls, as a percentage of all these interactions. But each of these phone calls is much more important, and they can use analytics to augment the employee's skills and make sure that customer experience is really good. Now, when I sort of first started looking at this, it was really a case of the analytics system was going to augment the employee. But actually what we're seeing now is the recognition that actually it could be the human employee that augments the system. I'm not sure if anybody has seen it, but there was a big article in Wired recently that talked about Nissan's automatic self-driving cars. And if these cars get stuck, they escalate to a call center. And the human being in the employee in the call center has to help the self-driving car get out of this situation.
I don't want to say cart before the horse or a horse. I can't even think of an analogy of that one. That's a good feeling. Makes you feel good that technology needs our help, right?
It does. It kind of still says we're in control.
Yes. Hey, last question. What do you think this means for chain of command, the supervisor's impact on working with these folks and team leaders? How's that going to change?
Well, I think if you look at those sort of three approaches of smarter work, of smarter employee, collaborating employee, and augmented employee, really there the supervisor role almost becomes akin to a manager in an existing enterprise. They're not there to crack the whip. They're not there to ensure compliance to schedules, etc. They're there almost as a coach for that particular employee to help them through certain situations. So it is very much a step away from the command and control architecture that we've seen in some contact centers into almost a traditional employee and manager role where that manager has their own certain system of tasks. They may have an escalation call coming in, but they're really there to help and coach that employee through these interactions or through to the next stages in their career rather than sort of enforce control amongst these people.
Well, I know a lot of managers that would welcome that. We should wrap up here, Richard. You're always so kind with your time, and perspectives are always enlightening. Do you have anything to summarize and wrap this whole thing with a bow?
No, at the moment, I just going to say I don't think that there is any one definite approach out of those three that is being chosen. If I had to sort of look at the way that technology is moving, I'd suspect that we will move more to the analytics approach compared to the other two in the long term. But it's interesting to see where companies are going in the short term, and there's a good split between each of those three at the moment.
And how has Plantronics adapted to this? You mentioned you've got a pretty cool environment there in Santa Cruz. You welcome people to come check out. Give us a quick insight to what that looks like and how it's changed.
Well, if I compare to when I first came here 14 years ago, where we had really high barriers, everywhere was a sort of anonymous beige color. Nowadays, everything is low barriers to encourage collaboration. There are lots of different types of workspaces. So if you want to do just normal email work, you've got a central space. If you want to do some focus work, there's breakout rooms. We've also got this really good technology in the background that ensures that your voice does not carry all across the office. So you can have reasonably private conversations at your desk. You can ensure that you're not heard by the person 3 meters away, which pairs up really nicely with the headset that ensures you can be heard really clearly with a customer on the phone.
Well, I'm excited to see what you guys have cooking. I know you've referenced your center there in the UK as well. Waterfalls, all kinds of interesting things going on over there. But clearly the work environment has to change to adapt to the next generation of employees. And you guys, as usual, are on the leading edge in that area. So we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time, as always. I look forward to our next conversation. And again, encourage people to reach out to you if no other way through LinkedIn. And we encourage you to also see Plantronics on the CCNG website. We're always filling new content and stuff that Richard's given us to share with the membership. So thank you for your time today. Great to see you again.
All right. Thank you again, David.